This is my musical introduction to studying the book of James.
We have made it to James chapter 5. There are 5 chapters in James, and we did the first one, then the second one, then the third one. We just finished the 4th one, and now we are on the pinky finger of James, and I'm really excited. James chapter 5, verses 1 through 12 contain what I'm going to call 3 lessons in a simple life. 3 lessons in simple living. It is going to count as 3 separate lessons, lessons 8, 9, and 10 in the series of 12 lessons in real-world faith. But this is 3 lessons in a simple life. The first one, chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, is going to be about wealth. Let's dive in. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail over the miseries that are coming on you. Your wealth has rotted. Your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have stored up treasure in the last days. Look, the pay that you withheld from the workers who mowed your field cries out, and the outcry of the harvesters has reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You've lived luxuriously on the earth and have indulged yourselves. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the righteous who does not resist you. I think this can be summed up in a pretty simple set of ideas. Number 1, the more you have to lose. It's been said ad nauseum and put on t-shirts and bumper stickers, but you can't take it with you. Whatever you acquire on this earth, we believe as Jesus followers that there will come a time when this earth passes away. And if those things are going to pass away, they're going to be done. They're going to be gone. They will be no longer. And you will feel the pain of losing all of those things that you have acquired and grown accustomed to and trusted your life in. There is a serious danger of putting your hope and your trust in wealth and assets, rather than putting your hope and trust in God's provision day by day. Not just monetarily, but spiritually, physically, emotionally. And if you have a lot of things, remember the parable of the rich young ruler, or the story of the rich young ruler coming to Jesus. And he said, hey, how can I get into your kingdom? That rich young ruler has probably never been denied entrance to a thing a day in his life, right? He has wealth, he has status, he has privilege, if you want to call it that. And Jesus says, sell everything you own. Get rid of everything you have on earth and follow me. Can you imagine the torment and the pain and the hurt he must have felt hearing Jesus say, you can't have your nice cushy life and have my life? But all Jesus was doing was shortcutting the process. Because one day, all the silver and gold he had will corrode, turn to rust, go back to the earth. One day, all the fine clothes he has will be eaten by the moths. One day, all that wealth will pass away and justice will be done. I am not necessarily anti-capitalism or anti-business, but certainly it can be said that the wealthy tend to propagate injustice toward the poor. And it's pointed out here in James very clearly. He says let me get it right here. I'm going to get it right. I don't want to paraphrase. Verse 4, look, the pay that you withheld from the workers cries out. Now, I think this is in reference to Cain and Abel, if you remember that story. That Cain and Abel, one brother killed the other, and it said the blood cried out from the soil. That like the earth itself was crying out in anguish, screaming. And this is a similar idea, that this grave injustice has been done, and that to some degree there is a weeping and a wailing that will be done on earth for this great injustice. And certainly when judgment finally comes upon those who have been unjust, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. But I just want you to see that A, the more you have to lose, and B, the injustice of the uber wealthy will come back to haunt them when God brings final justice on everything. And finally, God sees dishonest gain. It's not that God just doesn't see these kind of inequalities while they're happening. The Lord sees a dishonest gain. He says, you've lived luxuriously on the earth and indulged yourselves. You've fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. So when there was a famine, or when something was happening in the world, and the poor couldn't, persist on just the fruit of the land, and if the milk from their goats and cows wasn't making them enough income, they would have to slaughter the animals that they had for their monetary gain in order to simply eat. I think this is kind of the image, like a day of famine and a day of slaughter and a day where the poor and the hungry are unable to feed themselves. You're having a feast, and you feel like you have absolutely no dog in the fight when it comes to those other people who are hurting. I believe that that's a dishonest gain, and I believe the Lord sees it. And I think it's very clear that those people who have done the injustice of great wealth, God says, you've condemned, you've murdered the righteous, because the righteous do not resist you. And the Lord's going to see that and bring justice to that. So I don't want this to sound economic or political really in nature. I want this to remind you of what the whole book of James has been about in terms of a real world faith. Number one, we have to trust that God is ultimately going to bring justice. And there are those who are starving tonight and those who are taking, baths in $100 bills. We have to trust that God sees it. We have to trust that God will make it right. And we have to know that ultimately, though they may be, some may be immeasurably wealthy on earth, anyone, especially those who are hurting and hungry, can be extraordinarily wealthy in the kingdom of God. They can be with him in eternity, in his presence. And that might just be more precious than silver and gold. Now, chances are I'm not talking to the extraordinarily wealthy here, so I don't want to end it on a condemnatory note. But if you are one of those who feels like you've been taken advantage of and has been working and grinding and slaving just to save a penny, I just want to end it on this. God sees you, he loves you, he will provide for you, and in his kingdom, he has abundant riches for you. Okay? Love you.